And I talked a couple minutes ago about faith not being magically powerful in and of itself. It matters in whom we are placing our faith. See, the disciples placed their faith in somebody who was going to come and conquer Rome. There have been many conquering kings in the history of the world. You have your Alexander, Cyrus, Genghis Khan, Oda Nobunaga, like the list goes on. But all of these people are human. They died the same way that we're going to. There's no lasting power to put your faith in there. But Jesus, the sacrificial lamb, he is the greatest conquering king, because while these other names, they conquered kingdoms on earth for themselves, Jesus conquered what none of them ever could: death itself. Jesus is the greatest conquering king because he conquered death through his resurrection, and he eternally marks the end of sin and death itself. We don't often pair together a conquering king and a humble little lamb who's going to be sacrificed. But Jesus' death on the cross as the sacrificial lamb was the permanent decision on undoing the effects of the curse of sin. Jesus is the conquering king, but not the one the disciples were looking for, and not the one that they were placing their faith in. He was a conquering king far greater than they were asking for, but it's not who they were looking for. And now we're really privileged to be on this side of the cross historically. And it's easy to look back on the disciples and say, well, how can they miss this? Jesus has been telling them for the last chapter and a half that he is going to die. We can look back on the death and resurrection, and we judge the disciples for this, and yet we do the same thing. We have the luxury of being on this side of Jesus' death and resurrection, and yet we still put our faith in the wrong Jesus. See, their faith is placed in Jesus, the conquering king. It doesn't take much faith at all to have faith in that Jesus. And we might not be waiting for a king to overthrow Rome, but we want to put our faith in a Jesus of our own making. We want to have faith in a Jesus who gives us a happy, healthy, comfortable life where nothing ever goes wrong. But that doesn't sound like taking up a cross and following Jesus. In John 15:20, Jesus promises we will be persecuted like he was persecuted. We want to have faith in the Jesus who gives us whatever we want whenever we ask him, because he died on the cross to give us our best life now. That's a prosperity gospel. That is not the gospel at all. We want to have faith in the Jesus who affirms all of our sins. You know, he just loves everybody, and it's all good. Your sin is okay. You want to go live in your sin, that's okay. Grace and love for everybody. I love you for who you are, and you're perfect the way you are. You can be an adulterous, lying, drunken, homosexual, addicted, greedy, selfish individual all you want to, and that's okay. You don't need to change. We want the Jesus who lets us bask in our sin. People are right about one thing. The people who look to that Jesus are right about one thing. Jesus was a friend with sinners. But what did he tell them? He told them to go and sin no more. We want the Jesus who loves America most. He's going to make us great, and everything that America does is going to be ordained by God, and heaven is painted red, white, and blue. Like, there's lots of shades to this. What it's boiling down to is we want to make a build-a-Jesus who fits everything that we think he should be, and that's the Jesus that we want to put our faith in. There is no power in that. There is no power in that faith, because that is not the Jesus who saves. That's not the Jesus who died on a cross and was resurrected. That's a Jesus of our own making, which means it's not Jesus at all. This is your like foot stomp, big moment to take out of this, right? Without our faith being in the Jesus who dies a humiliating death on a cross to be the propitiation for our sins, And further, conquering death and sin by resurrecting from the dead 3 days later, our faith is powerless. Our faith is just as good as that man's faith in his unglued windshield from earlier. It is powerless, and moreover, it's dangerous. We need faith in a resurrected king. We need faith in the king who came to die on a cross and was resurrected from the dead. That is the real conquering king to put our faith in. The disciples' faith fails them because they miss the mark with the object of their faith. Put your faith in the king who conquered death through his resurrection. Put your faith in Jesus.